Hello, and welcome to the online book club. We're in the middle of The Little Prince, and today we begin with chapter 16. You will remember that last week we saw the little prince on a journey of self-discovery and a journey of learning about his world. He went to many planets and met a lot of different kinds of people. And each person he met was an example of a different type of typical grown-up. Typical grown-up. Hold on one sec. Typical, meaning it was a person who is not unusual. It was a person who has ordinary characteristics of a grown-up. So we saw a businessman, a king, a lamplighter, a tippler, which is another word for an alcoholic, and a conceited man. And also a geographer. And finally, the geographer advised the little prince to come to the planet Earth. And in chapter 16, he arrives. And in this chapter, which is only one page long, the narrator tries to give us an idea of the size of the Earth based on how many of each type of person it has, totaling 6 billion grown-ups. And as you know, grown-ups are not the kind of people that you could be friends with in this book. So, you can listen to how I say all the numbers on the audio as we read it. 111 kings, 7,000 geographers, 900,000 businessmen, 7,500,000 tipplers, 311 million conceited men, about 2 billion grown-ups. I never added up those numbers, so I don't know if they all add up to 2 billion. That's the kind of thing a grown-up would do. And an army of 462,511 lamplighters. And then he gives a visual idea of the turning of the earth and the lighting of the lamps. And I wondered if anyone had ever made a movie of that from The Little Prince. I didn't search for it. The idea is, as the world turns, night is falling in a given place. So as the world turns, night is falling in a different place every minute, and the lamplighters are lighting their lamps in sequence, one after the other, as the world turns. And the author, Antonie de Saint-Exupéry, imagined this to be like a dance, a ballet, with the lights coming on in a wave. It would be magnificent, he says. And then he says, only the man who was in charge of the single lamp at the North Pole and his colleague who was responsible for the single lamp at the South Pole, only these two would live free from toil and care, because they would be busy twice a year. When I was a child, I had the idea that the day was 6 months long at the pole, North Pole and South Pole. So you would have sunrise, say in one month, maybe January, and then it would be daytime all the way until June, and then it would get dark, and you would light your lamp, and it would be dark from June until December, and then in January light it again. I now don't think it really is that way at the North Pole and the South Pole. I think that you have morning and night every day, every 24 hours. But the days get gradually longer until the day is almost the whole 24 hours. And then it starts getting shorter again until you get to a point where your whole day is night, 24 hours. There's one day a year that's all night, and one day a year that's all day. And every other day is a mixture of dark and light. So this idea of lamplighters only working twice a year is not accurate. And when I was a child, I believed him, and I thought that that's how it was. And it was some difficult work for me to figure it out for this class to clarify. So I'm a grown-up and figured it out. Okay, let's go on. The Little Prince makes the acquaintance of a snake. By the way, there's a typographical error in chapter 16 in the second sentence, well, third sentence. One can count there 111 kings. You do not need that comma. When I tried to read this for your audio, I kept making a mistake because that comma is wrong. There should be no comma. It's one can count there 111 kings. So if you have a comma at all, it should be after the word there, not before it. Actually, there are several typographical errors in the material we will read today. Several errors. Okay, chapter 17. The Little Prince makes the acquaintance of. Make the acquaintance of is a very formal way to say he meets the snake. He meets the snake. Let's see. When one wishes to play the wit, that means when one wants to be witty or to tell a good story, to speak well, to be eloquent is to be witty. Play the wit means to be witty. When one wishes to play the wit, he sometimes wanders a little bit from the truth. Sometimes you make things more exciting if you are trying to be witty and tell a good story. I have not been altogether honest in what I've told you about the lamplighters. And I realize that I run the risk of giving a false idea of our planet to those who do not know it. The no is a typographical error. The K should be next to the N, K-N-O-W. He is not going to tell us that they are only busy one day a year in the North Pole. He is going to say that he is giving the idea that there are many, many people. But really, the truth is, the planet Earth is so huge and the people are so small that if we were all to stand together, we would take up about as much space, I have heard, as the state of New Jersey. You know, something very small. Here he says, you could be put in a public square 20 miles long and 20 miles wide. But this was 100 years ago. And now, or 50, 70 years ago, now there's 10 billion people on this earth, so it's more space. He says the grown-ups would not like to believe that they could fit in so small an area because they want to feel that their impact on the world is great and that they are important. But really, they're very small, and the planet is very large. It says, they fancy themselves as important as the baobabs. Fancy means imagine. They imagine that they are important, like the baobabs. You remember, baobabs can burst a planet with their roots very quickly. Baobabs are dangerous to small planets, and they are huge, enormous trees. Grown-ups want to see themselves as just that important. You should advise them then to make their own calculations. He's speaking to children. They adore figures. Again, figures is one word, F-I-G-U-R-E-S. It's a typo. They adore figures, and that will please them. Grown-ups like numbers, so let them do the math to figure out how much space it takes for 10 billion people and find out how many square miles would be needed. They adore figures, they love calculating, and it will please them. But do not waste your time on this extra task. It is unnecessary. You have, I know, confidence in me. So he tells the children, don't worry about proving my words. You trust me. Let the grown-ups do that, adults. When the little prince arrived on Earth, he was very much surprised not to see any people. He was beginning to be afraid he had come to the wrong planet when a coil of gold, the color of moonlight, flashed across the sand. A coil is a word that is usually used for rope. When you wind it up, it means something sort of ropey, and it is a snake. The color of moonlight, it was a yellow snake. The little prince is always polite. Good evening, he says. And the snake replies. He tells him he's in Africa, in the desert. And the little prince asks where the people are. And the snake tells him, they're not in the desert. The earth is large. And then he starts thinking about the stars. He wonders whether the whole purpose of stars is to help people find their own planet. And the snake asks him why he's come to the earth. And he confesses he's been having some trouble with a flower. The reason the prince left was because of his flower, his rose, who grieved him by her behavior. And then the little prince talks to him again and says, where are the people? Where are the men? It's lonely in the desert. The little prince is lonely. And the snake tells him it is also lonely among men. Just being with people isn't enough. You are funny, said the little prince. You are no thicker than a finger. But I am more powerful than the finger of a king, said the snake. The snake is thinking of his power of death. He can bite the little prince and send him back to his planet. The little prince smiled. You are not very powerful. You haven't even got feet. You can't even travel. The little prince thinks traveling is what gives him power. He can leave his rose. But the snake says, I can carry you further than a ship could take you. And he twined around the little prince's ankle. Whomever I touch, I send back to the earth from whence he came. Whomever I touch, that's like whoever, but whom is the object form. I touch you. I touch whom? I touch you. It's object, him, whom. Whomever I touch, I send back to the earth from whence he came. This is a construction meaning the place you came from. But you are innocent and true, and you come from a star. The snake recognized that this prince is not like a regular human person. And the snake went on, you move me to pity. You are so weak on this earth made of granite. I can help you someday if you grow too homesick for your planet. And he's going to offer to bite him and kill him and send him back. But the little prince says, oh, I understand you, but why do you always speak in riddles? And the snake says, I solve them all. Death is the solver of our questions, our riddles, our doubts and conundrums. Death is the one that solves them. Chapter 18. The prince goes looking for men and meets a flower. The little prince meets a very simple flower in the desert. She is shallow. She doesn't know anything, and she thinks she does know everything. She's beautiful but simple. He asks her, where are the men? And she says, I think there are 6 or 7 of them in existence, because those are the only ones she has ever seen. And she thinks they are blown about by the wind. She cannot imagine any life other than her own. Goodbye, says the little prince. Goodbye, she replies. Chapter 19. The prince climbs a mountain range. Now this is interesting to me, because the picture shows very pointy mountains. And Antonie de Saint-Exupéry obviously knew what mountains look like. But on Earth, mountains are not pointy like needles. So I don't know why he drew that picture. And we have the little prince on the very top, which obviously cannot be true. I am a grown-up. I care about these things. So, after that, the little prince climbs a high mountain. And he is trying to see the whole planet. He still does not realize how huge the Earth is. So he shouts, "Good morning!" And the echo comes back, "Good morning." And then he doesn't understand it's an echo. So he says, "Who are you? Who are you? Who are you?" "Be my friends, I'm all alone." I'm all alone. All alone. And he says, what a queer planet. Queer means strange, unusual. It is altogether dry. That means dry everywhere. Altogether pointed. Altogether harsh and forbidding. It's interesting that he says altogether for all of these, because the word means the whole planet is this way. But he has been on a flat desert that was not pointy. So I think it shows his emotion. Everything seems terrible. He is all alone. And the people have no imagination. They repeat whatever one says to them. One means anybody, whatever a person says. On my planet, I had a flower. She was always the first to speak. He misses his flower. He speaks of her often in his loneliness. Chapter 20. The little prince discovers a garden of roses. But it happened that after walking for a long time through the sand and rocks and snow, how cold, the little prince at last came upon a road, and all roads lead to the abodes of men. Abodes means homes, dwellings. All roads lead to men, because men make the roads. And he finds a garden full of roses. "Good morning," he says, and the roses reply, "Good morning." He can speak to flowers. The little prince gazed at them, and they all looked like his flower. And he thought his flower was unique, the only one of her kind. And here's a whole garden full of them. He was overcome with sadness because there were 5,000 roses just like his own in a single garden. And I think about how he had a wife who was his rose. And then when he left her, he found that the world was filled with beautiful women for the asking. He could have 1,000 mistresses. His one beautiful wife was not all that special after all. It wasn't an amazing thing to have a beautiful wife. 1,000 more in a single garden. He thought she would be very much annoyed, I guess so. If she should see this, she would cough dreadfully and pretend she was dying to avoid being laughed at. That was her way, to pretend to need help, so that he would feel guilty for not taking care of her. And I should be obliged to pretend that I was nursing her back to life, for if I did not do that, to humble myself also, she would really allow herself to die. Actually, this almost happened. In the biography of his wife, called The Story of the Rose, she almost died a number of times, and he had to rescue her. She almost died from neglect of him, from depression and sorrow when he left, and then he would rush back and save her. He went on with his reflections. I thought that I was rich, with a flower that was unique in all the world. And all I had was a common rose. A common rose. He's angry. And 3 volcanoes that come up to my knees. One of them may be extinct forever. That doesn't make me a very great prince. And he lay down in the grass and cried. When he found out that his wife was not unique in all the world, it was just a common woman, a common flower, he felt that he himself was not special. And he became depressed. Chapter 21. The little prince befriends the fox. It was then that the fox appeared. Good morning, said the fox. The fox is the first person who says good morning to him. Usually the little prince is the one who initiates conversation, but the fox approached him. Good morning, the little prince responded politely, although he couldn't see anything. He didn't know where to look to find the fox. I'm here, under the apple tree, said the fox. Who are you? You're very pretty to look at. I am a fox, said the fox. By the way, hold on one second.